Hello, citizens of Lynchburg, and welcome back to this video series where we are examining the Lynchburg City Council and the City Manager's Department. So what we're going to do today is a recap because we've covered a lot of material since the second reading of the budget meeting on June 30th. So let's go over where we've been and where we've arrived.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. And the beginning is that the city manager's department wanted the real estate tax to be raised. And when they found that some of the council members were not going to agree to that, they threatened to cut all these services. Now, one of the odd things was that some of these services actually generated revenue, and others, such as social services, were actually largely funded by state and federal dollars. So basically, these were not very wise decisions. So it begged the question, who is making these decisions? So that introduced us to City Manager Mr. Winter Benda and Deputy City Manager Mr. Greg Patrick. And it turned out that they were not making maybe the wisest decisions regarding the budget for the citizens of Lynchburg, but they were making pretty good decisions for their own budget. So we learned that since they arrived from Norfolk, Virginia in roughly 2021 and 2022, their own salaries had increased respectively 43% and 35%. So that they were now making, well, these numbers are no longer accurate, but just those combined salaries are over $500,000, which is more than the amount of the services that were cut. And at the same time they were cutting the services, they were also planning to give their own department another 14.1% raise.
So, wow, you would have thought this is a serious problem. We've got a city manager who proposes a budget that's putting a much higher tax burden on the citizens for their real estate tax. He's also threatened to cut services, and he's giving his own department a raise at the same time. So you would have thought, wow, this is a big red flag. We've got a problem going on. But in fact, we had 3 people on city council who did nothing but defend the city manager and use rhetorical strategies to try to get us to feel that any attempt to question the budget was wrong, that we shouldn't question the budget because that would be unfair to the city manager. So there was a lot of rhetorical manipulation using Darvo, which we talked about, using artificial integrity, and also just plain flat out, pretty much insulting and disparaging the other members of council, Misjins, Timmer, and Deemer, and accusing them of shenanigans and backhanded deals and so on. And in particular, Reed did not want Mr. Misjins to use his clipboard. So clearly, Mr. Mistin's clipboard is a real problem for the city manager's department because he's actually looking at the numbers in the budget and things are not adding up. And plus, he's not getting the information. None of the council members were getting information in a timely fashion. But one of the things he noticed was a discrepancy in the capital improvement plan of $6 million that were unaccounted for. He also noticed that the proposed increase in salary and benefits to the city manager's department was not the COLA raise of 3%, but it was in fact a 14% raise. So Mr. Mischin's clipboard is asking questions and looking at things that are really to our advantage. And so what else is going on in those meetings? So one thing you'll notice when you watch the city council meeting on June 30th was the number of agitators in the room. People were clapping very loudly every time that Reed Feraldi or Wilder spoke in favor of the city manager. And they were booing any time that Deemer and Misjins and Timmer spoke about the actual budget numbers. So that was all designed to, again, influence the mayor. Because remember, he's the swing vote. So a lot of this is designed particularly to influence the mayor's perception. And so we did a video on the ASH experiments in conformity, and those experiments showed that we have a tendency to change our viewpoint and change our perception and actually flip our perception based on what the majority of the group sees and thinks. There's a real conformity bias. And so that's why those agitators are in the room. They're not there to influence us. They're there to influence the mayor. And here's an example. This gentleman was removed from the room. He was removed from the room because he was yelling at the mayor to have a woman kicked out who was criticizing the city manager. So this gentleman was actually wanted to silence criticism of the city manager. He wanted that woman removed. But then he went on his Facebook page claiming to be an advocate of the people, an activist for the people. But that wasn't the case. So there's a lot of deception going on in these meetings. So let's see more detail about what's going on. So we saw an exchange with Sterling Wilder and the Deputy City Manager Greg Patrick, in which Sterling Wilder told us that he had been told by the City Manager's Department for many, many months that unless the real estate tax were increased, that all these services would have to be cut. But that was not the case. And then again, just to show how much power and control the city manager's department has over these three members of council, Reed, Feraldi, and Sterling Wilder, we had Mr. Feraldi actually asking Deputy City Manager Greg Patrick what motion he should make regarding the restoration of the services. So that is a real overstepping the limits of authority of the city manager. It's basically putting the city manager on the dais. And so here we have another example showing that there's something very wrong with the relationship between the city manager's department and the city council, because in this video that we did, it shows the Honorable Mayor Larry Taylor kind of imploring Deputy City Manager Greg Patrick to restore these services. But that is not Greg Patrick's responsibility. That is the City Council's responsibility to decide which services to augment and which services to cut back on, what new things need to be provided, where the money is going to go. That is the responsibility of City Council, and that is being usurped. The city manager's responsibility is to give detailed, accurate, comprehensible, full information on the budget, on the revenue and the expenses to City Council so that they can make these important policy and legislative decisions. But that is not being done. So finally, you'll see that the last way we're being manipulated is through the rules of order. And we watched a video with Mr. Feraldi using the motion, call the question. And what that does is conclude all discussion. It shuts down debate on the issues. But what we've noticed is that often in these meetings, even the city attorney, when asked to repeat what the motion is and what the ordinance states, there's often confusion, and that is all intentional. So basically what we've seen is that the city council meetings are all geared to obscure the facts, to conceal the budget, to make it seem a bad thing to ask questions, to vilify and demonize the members of council, Misjans, Deemer, and Timmer, who do want to ask questions. And it's all designed to alter our perceptions so that we do whatever the city manager says to do. So for that reason, I urge you to write to the Honorable Mayor Larry Taylor. He is in the middle. He is the swing vote, and he is being misled. He loves the city of Lynchburg, and he wants it to flourish. So I really urge you to write him and ask him to have a forensic audit done of the budget. We need to find out where the money is going. The city manager's job is not being done, and we need to see what's really going on. So I urge you to write him an email requesting that a forensic audit be conducted immediately. And if there's opposition to that, look where it's coming from, and there's your answer. So until next time, stay well. Next time we're going to go over what happened on August 26th. Bye for now.